And we're back. We had a little bit of technical issues. Not on our problem. YouTube got tired. It stopped us. 4.5 hours in, I would imagine so. But hope that, again, everything's squared away and we're back here as we look at the election results for 2020. Still waiting, as we've said, some of those key states that are literally razor edge. We're waiting on those to make a decision and a final call. And if we get those, we're going to hold those for the big board. We'll go back to that in just a little bit. James Collier, Jason Smith, happy to have you along with us. Let's flip over real quickly. Let's go back over to the race for the Senate. Still 13 states that have not reported. And currently right now it sits 43-43. 13 have elected on the Republican side, only 8 on the Democratic. And this coming in was a projected of a 49-46 split between the Democrats taking the House. And if that does not occur, that may be another change that we see depending on how things play out. But you could have a Democrat president, you could see a Republican House, or for the first time in a while, you could see a Republican president and a Republican House.
Yes, hasn't happened since George W. Bush, I believe. We will pay very close attention to the House and Senate races especially. We've had some Senate results tonight that have been a little surprising. The Republicans have done far better than what we anticipated, with several states still out, and we're waiting on those results to come in. I think it's safe to say that the House will probably stay with Democratic control. So we'll see how the Senate progresses and if it stays Republican, and then of course how the presidential election turns out. We'll pay close attention to it as well because it's a balance of power, and that balance will be determined hopefully tonight.
Yeah, without a doubt. And again, as we mentioned, still waiting on a few key states to try to make a call as we go forward. Again, nothing off the outside realm of what we've expected from the election results. The ticker there that you see on the bottom currently has vice presidential candidate Joe Biden at 205, Donald Trump at 162 with the total votes in the Electoral College. Let's go ahead and take a look at all of the results from around Kentucky. We're also going to dip over a couple of key races that were in Ohio. So let's pause here for an election update. So we look at the presidential race. Donald Trump in a landslide in the state of Kentucky, 62%, 1.2 million votes over Joe Biden's 720,000. So no surprise here. Donald Trump takes Kentucky. In the U.S. Senate, it was Mitch McConnell with an easy victory over Amy McGrath, 58% to 38%. Mitch McConnell with nearly 1.2 million votes to Amy McGrath's 760,000. Jason, when you look at that race, the numbers, do they surprise you at all? You look at a Mitch McConnell, 36 years plus in office. Amy McGrath, that was one of the things that she really was pushing, term limits. And, you know, you look at one side, you say, you're crazy for running against term limits because people in office are not going to go against term limits. That's cutting their job.
Yeah.
But if you can get one in and then have others that follow, then maybe you can do that. But it's almost kind of like you ran against an empty promise because there was really no hopes of being able to keep it.
Yeah, exactly. That's something that would obviously have to progress through the entire Congress. It would have to be signed by the president. You can run on that issue and you can be for term limits. The likelihood of that getting passed by both branches of government, probably not real good. So, you know, the margin of victory for Mitch McConnell is a little surprising. The fact that he has won, probably not.
When you look at the campaign, and I know Mr. Booz brought this up several times, and you look at Amy McGrath ran a very strong campaign, But when you look at the campaign that Mitch McConnell ran against her, of course, there were the smear campaigns, and they work against each other. But you also saw the conservatives that ran campaigns against her as well. And you wonder how much that took away the efforts that Mitch McConnell had to do himself of running against her, because she had so many people that were really against what she offered and what she could do for the state.
Which was a little odd because she's a veteran, has a wonderful track record with her military career. She's a mother, which would obviously play out very well with female voters. I think it's just the margin of victory. I think Amy McGrath on paper, if you was to set a resume down and take a look at it, is an impressive person. Out on the campaign trail, maybe that's where she lacked just a little bit. And again, it's hard to run against an incumbent.
And I know that one of the things, too, that she was very big on Second Amendment rights. And obviously a Marine, a fighter pilot. She had her marksmanship in 2 different pieces of ammunition. And you think about that, especially in a state that Kentucky, people want their Second Amendment rights. And it kind of makes you wonder, was that not enough to be able to pull her over more than what it was? Because, I mean, this was never really a close battle after about the first 45 minutes of votes starting to poll in.
Well, you also factor in that during the primary, she did go against Mr. Booker. And it was a very close race between those two. And she may have taken some, for lack of a better description, some body blows and weakened her chances against a strong incumbent of 36 years.
And you bring up Booker, and we talked about him, Charles Booker. He was a late addition on the ticket. Many thought, had he been able to get the nomination on the Democratic side, he may have had the backing of the African American population. That may have been enough to slide and maybe not unseat Mitch McConnell, but give him a tightly contested race that he hasn't seen in quite some time.
It most certainly could have made him possibly a little bit more nervous than what he was this evening.
So again, Mitch McConnell will continue in his seat as he moves forward. All right, let's go back to the election results. We go to the U.S. House of Representatives. District 4, Thomas Massie, the incumbent, the Republican, in a landslide over Alexandria Owensby. 254,000 votes to 123 for Dr. Owensby. Thomas Massie, the Republican, continues. In the Supreme Court, this one has finally called. District 7, Robert Conley takes the victory over Chris Harris. 55% to 45%. 89,000 votes for Robert Conley over Chris Harris's 74. Let's go through all of the district races within the state of Kentucky. We go back to the House of Representatives. District 5 finds the Republican Harold Rogers victorious over Matthew Best. This was a 250,000 vote to 47,000 vote differential there in District 5. In District 27, Stephen West, the Republican over the Libertarian Brian Short. In District 29, this one is still not gone final, but I can tell you who's going to win. It's going to be Johnny Turner because it's Johnny Turner, Johnnnie, versus Johnny, Johnnny. The Republican versus the Democrat, NNIE, is currently leading that one with 94% in the polls. Philip Wheeler appears to have this one won in the 31st District over Glenn Hammond. In the 93rd District, Norma Kirk McCormick leads Rod Varney, 9,000 to 5,000. Ashley Lafferty over William Reynolds in District 95. Patrick Flannery has won District 96 over Kathy Hinkle. District 97 finds Bobby McCool a victor over William Hurst. District 99, Richard White over William Redwine. And District 100 finds Scott Sharp the winner over Terry Clark. In the 2 amendments, both of these have gone final. Amendment 1, Rights for Crime Victims. 1.1 million vote yes to pass this amendment. On Amendment 2, increased judicial terms, a whopping nearly 3 million vote no, saying they do not want to see judicial terms increased from 6 to 8 years. So that's all the poll results throughout Kentucky. The two amendments, we've talked about those. Criminal rights of being alerted if your family is victimized, a criminal goes to prison, they're then released, you're notified and know that this criminal is now on parole, they have been released, and you get status of where that is. And you can look at both sides of that. One, it allows the family to know, hey, this person is out. But two, on the other argument of this, and I didn't think about this until I had a conversation earlier today, it also allows that person to know this person is now out as well. And yes, it's a very dangerous situation and a very tricky situation, but Kentucky voted, they spoke, and they spoke loudly.
Yeah, and I think it's one of those situations where it would be safe for us to say that the vote reflects the fact that we have a tendency within the Commonwealth of Kentucky to lean more towards victims' rights. I think that's a safe assumption on our part with that amendment.
In Ohio, the U.S. House District 6, Bill Johnson, the Republican, no problems getting past Shauna Roberts, 237 to 81 in that race there. So just a couple to pass along over in the state of Ohio from that point from earlier today. As we approach midnight, again, we anxiously await the decisions for what we see as a possibility. Joe Biden currently in front, 206 to 162. The Maine coming in with one of their votes as a split state as well. The same thing we saw in Nebraska, that they split with their vote. But you look at where we have, this could easily be decided tonight. This could go on for quite some time. And the question still relies on about, as you, I think in the last segment you hit it, you could take this down to 6 states and you could probably decide it where it's going to go from that point forward.
Yeah, I mean, that's just with the technology that we have in this day and time. It allows those candidates and also allows us to monitor elections and polls and those type of things more closely than what we were able to, let's say, a generation ago. And knowing what we know and having the access to the information that we do, it makes narrowing a presidential election down a little easier. Not always perfect. We learned that in the last election, but it does make it easier to track these things.
Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll continue our coverage here for Decision 2020 here on GCHS TV.
course, that's California coming.
Back here with 10 minutes to go before the hour of midnight. We're about to finish up hour number 4. Can we go 5 hours? Oh my goodness. This is kind of what we expected.
Yeah.
2020 election. It's 2020. Why not? Anything is off the board on this one. But when we look at the score currently of what we have, Biden at 206, Trump 162, and the sizable shift occurred in the 11 o'clock hour when the West Coast came in. You report California, Oregon, Washington, New Mexico. No surprise, those went Democratic. And that was the difference of currently where we stand. Unfortunately, since about, 9:30, we have been hanging on pins and needles waiting for 6 states: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. And if Texas goes, and I've been told that it has gone to President Trump. It has not shown up on our report yet, so we're not going to report it until it's gone final. But that really evens things back up. And again, we've talked about, as Mr. Booth talked about, the Rust Belt, that northern Wisconsin, Minnesota, Ohio, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Indiana, those areas right there. We've already seen Ohio, which was a swing state, go red. And you look at Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, 2 of those 3 were projected blue before tonight, and now the numbers are showing it looks like they're going to go red. Those flip red. Texas goes red. We go to bed and we know who's the president.
Yeah, and I think Mr. Booz brought it out very well earlier. Those Rust Belt states tend to vote in a block. As one goes, they all go, so to speak. In addition to that, I read earlier today that 1/3 of Americans that were polled felt the economy was the single most important issue in this election. So if that's the case, and knowing as well as what our economy was doing prior to the pandemic, and it's starting to rebound just a bit. I know in the third quarter of this year, we had a 33% increase in growth within our economy, which is a huge amount of growth in one quarter. If the economy is doing well, the Rust Belt states are going to probably stay with the incumbent.
And it's something to think about, especially what we've seen through COVID since March. Unastronomically high numbers of unemployment, small businesses having to shut their doors permanently because they could not function during the COVID times. And it's something to think of, if you can find a way in so many bad things that we're dealing with right now, to find a way to find some positives for the nation, and rebounding that economy, I think, is so very key. And that could be the one deciding factor that could swing a person that maybe is on the fence from one side to the other.
Yeah, it's an issue that has a tendency to move. There are issues, and people vote on certain issues that have a tendency not to change a whole lot. We could sit and make a list of those, but the economy moves. It has ebbs and flows. It has ups and downs, and typically and historically, it is very, very difficult to unseat an incumbent when the economy is doing at least okay. And considering where we have been with the pandemic since the month of March, I think the economy is okay and maybe even slightly improving as the months go on.
And that's something that I know Mr. Bruce talked about this so much, of why it is so hard to unseat an incumbent. And it's simply because you have that track record of 4 years laid out in front of you. And you at least know, good or bad, what they have done and what they will probably do for the next 4 years. And like that candidate or not, most people at least like the consistency of knowing what the next 4 years hold.
Yeah, absolutely. And a sitting president, for example, they're on the news every day. Doesn't matter what outlet that you're watching. They are the focus of the politics of this country for 4 years. And then they do have that track record. They have actually won that election in the past, are sitting in that seat right now, and are governing. And we go back, we had that conversation earlier, the difference between campaigning and governing. When you have an incumbent in office, they have a track record of governing. Whether you agree with it or don't agree with what they've done or the direction they've taken the country, that track record is there. They have done the job. And as one president said a few decades ago, changing horses midstream isn't always the best option. Some people view it that way. Not all people view it that way, but it is very difficult to be a sitting president that has another opportunity for 4 more years.
And you bring up a very good point. It's kind of like you build an engine, and the engine is functioning. You are making progress. It may not be the exact progress that you want, but you're making progress. And then midstream, you decide you want to make changes to said engine. And there's no guarantees that making changes to momentum is going to make momentum continue.
Absolutely. That's a really good analogy. And of course, with any engine, you can sometimes put your head under the hood of the car and hear noises, or something isn't running efficiently or effectively as it should. And we have situations like that with our sitting presidents, regardless of party. So as we move forward, as we hopefully wrap up this election, we'll learn some lessons and add some new history to our country.
What is the one thing, as we wrap up this hour and get ready to take it into the hour of midnight and the next day, when you look back at this election, what's the one thing that you are going to take away personally as yourself that says, this is the one thing I remember the most that happened in 2020?
In terms of the election, and a lot of things have been said about the silent majority. We alluded to that a little bit earlier. When people get those polling phone calls and they're not always honest, or when they talk to their neighbors or their friends or their family about who they support, they're not always honest. Not that they're being misleading or dishonest. They may not share what their true thoughts are. And when you have a situation such as that, there is a silent majority out there. And I think that silent majority spoke in 2016. And I think as we head towards the conclusion of this election, we're seeing the same thing.
I would have to totally agree. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, we go into hour number 5. That welcomes us into the day of Wednesday on the East Coast as we continue our coverage of 2020 decision. Will we have a decision? Reports still unconfirmed. Texas has gone to the incumbent. Donald Trump has secured a big piece of the puzzle. Now we wait for the dominoes to fall. That domino is 6 states, and we'll talk about those when we return as we continue. Hour number 5 here on Decision 2020 on GCHS TV. Well, back here on the coverage of GCHS TV's Decision 2020, James Carr, Jason Smith, as we welcome you into hour number 5 of our coverage. It is now Wednesday on the East Coast, and we still do not know who is going to win. Jason, you made a very good comment that we were looking at some of these states, and we're going to take a very detailed look at our map here in just a moment. But some of these states it's almost like they've stalled that's on the East Coast, and one has to wonder, is there something going on, or have we reached into states that all of the polling locations have reported, and now those absentee ballots that were not counted prior are now in the processes of being counted?
Very well could be. That might be what we're looking at in states like Pennsylvania seems stuck. North Carolina seems stuck. We still haven't called Georgia. Those states on the East Coast that have sort of stayed put for a significant amount of time, that may be the case. Well,
let's step off to the side. Let's take a look at our updated map. As we said, this is the latest map that we have to us using 270win.com, but we're going off of the states that's called. Nothing, again, that jumps off of the charts here that shows anything to believe that something crazy is going to happen. Now, with that being said, there's still nothing being decided yet, because what we do expect is we expect Texas to go red, okay? We've heard reports that it has gone red, but it has not changed here. This is the site we've gone with all night to report. We're going to stay with it until it changes off to the red. So no big issues there. Where we are going to await is right here. So when we come in, we know based off the numbers, Minnesota is going to go blue, okay? That was where it was in 2016. Nothing to make our changes here. Then we start into Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. And we're going to take an extended look at those 5 states because those 5 states, 3 of the 5, red or blue, is going to decide this election. When Texas flips to red, that's going to close the gap. So we're going to have a very tight race. At that point, it's going to be 210 to 204 in favor of Joe Biden. And then at that moment, you're looking at that collection of 5 states that could really determine where this election lands. So let's start first in Wisconsin. Now, Wisconsin, President Trump won Wisconsin in 2016. It was the first time it had flipped since 1988. He won it by less than 1%. Currently, with 67% of the votes in Wisconsin, which number is going up. So maybe Wisconsin is getting the rest of those votes counted in. But currently, President Trump leads nearly 52% to 47%, roughly about 111,000 votes. That is the difference in this state. That is a state that was projected Joe Biden would win. And we've talked about when you think of Wisconsin, you're thinking of Milwaukee, you're thinking of Madison, and Marquette. And that's really it. And the rest of Wisconsin is pretty much a grain, very flat, agricultural state, yeah. Rural America. And we've talked about it so much through this. Rural America seems to tilt towards Donald Trump.
Yep, and that's what we see consistently across several states.
Part of the blue wall, as they call it, but to see back-to-back years, or back-to-back elections, I should say, of red going in that northern part of the United States, what does that say against the Democrats, if anything?
Well, that's like we talked about last segment. I think it could be as simple as the economy. If the economy is at the very least okay, if not doing really well, then those states will stay with the way things are looking and stay with the incumbent. If the economy takes a turn to the worst, then it could flip. And I think that's what a lot of people were banking on. We did have a little bit of a struggle with the economy as we went through the pandemic. So I think a lot of folks thought that it may shift back to Joe Biden and become that blue wall again because of the struggles that we've had this year.
Well, real quickly, as we talk, my midnight math works, okay? Texas has been called, so Donald Trump has won Texas. That offsets the 55 that you get out there on the West Coast somewhat, but it pulls it closer. So 210 to 204. We've got 124 Electoral College votes that are still out there. Donald Trump needs 66. Joe Biden needing only 60. And again, we've talked about the conversation, 269 to 269 brings a whole other realm into that, and we'll talk about that before we go off the air. Okay, let's move over now to Michigan. And this is a state that, as I step off of the side here, 52%, this is a state that is kind of stopped.
It is stuck.
And we're not certain why this has happened, but 54% to 44%, a sizable difference, but you have to wonder where are the rest of these votes? Because we've seen Dearborn, Detroit, Flint, Ann Arbor, those areas have reported, but we're still at 52%, and that's in the Eastern time zone. Why is Michigan held up? And that's one of the big conversation pieces we've been waiting for.
Yeah, and 48% of the votes still out there. That's a significant chunk of votes to still come in. So why they're stuck? Great question. We're only about halfway home with Michigan.
And again, that one was the closest state of the 2016 election from there. Now, we move over to Pennsylvania. And this one is one that has been kind of stuck as well. Again, it was less than 1% deciding this state in 2016. President Trump, a 15%, call it 15% advantage, but only 55% of the vote. The question is, though, you have a very small urban compared to rural location. Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, your two main cities.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that's a pretty wide margin to overcome with, almost 3.7 million votes already in. It'll be interesting to see, but still yet we're only at 54.6% of the total vote. So stuck, and we're a lot like Michigan. We're waiting.
All right, so let's shoot on down the eastern coast. Let's head down to North Carolina. This is one that is not stuck. And at 98% of the vote, President Donald Trump has a very slim margin of a lead, 1.4%, less than 100,000 votes. And again, this is one of those states we talk about. These three right here, that's going to make it a big difference in this state.
Yeah, it would only if all of those votes, which you're playing scenarios here that aren't likely, but if all of those votes went to one candidate, let's say for example Vice President Biden, it still wouldn't make up the difference, but it would make it a whole heck of a lot closer. That's for sure.
Interesting factoid up there. North Carolina's voted Republican every election except for two, since 1968. So we're waiting for that one to shift. Now, Georgia. The numbers have started to move. We know this one was held up because of a water line break in Atlanta. We're not certain, again, of everything that happened there. But what has also happened is the break has started to flow in the favor of President Trump. 53% to 45.5%. Call it 81% have reported here in this one. Roughly about 300,000 votes in favor of Donald Trump. And you think about the cities that you have in Georgia, Atlanta, Augusta, and Marietta. Not a whole lot of major metropolis there for big numbers to come through. But again, how much was that breakage in the water line or whatever happened there in Atlanta? How much did that affect what we see for right here?
Well, I think a lot of folks thought that Georgia would be a swing state with the possibility of Vice President Biden winning that state because of the growth of Atlanta. I mean, it's one of the fastest growing cities in the United States. With that urban population continuing to explode, that's what shifted Georgia over into the swing state category. But it doesn't appear as though right now that it's enough to swing all the way to Vice President Biden for the win.
Okay, so here's what we have currently. This was the projection when we started our broadcast some 5 hours ago, back at the hour of 7 o'clock. So this was the projected map of what they thought was going to happen. Now, we feel like Wisconsin, Michigan are both going to flip red. Okay? We have Florida that has already gone red. It appears Georgia is going to go red, and probably North Carolina. Ohio is already red, which leaves Arizona and Iowa. And if it falls into that case, now that is also with Pennsylvania staying blue. Now, if Pennsylvania goes red, oops, don't mean to pick New York. We know New York's not going red. It's a no-brainer at that point. And that's really how close this thing is. And, we talked so much at the beginning of the broadcast. We kept talking about Arizona and how much Arizona had time spent toward it. But now that we get into the latter hours, the wee hours of the election, as it has every single time we do an election, right here, that's your deciding factor.
Yeah, and that's maybe a little bit of a disadvantage of being on the West Coast as those East Coast states come in. It has a tendency at times to affect how people vote on the West Coast. Maybe that's why we should take a look at advocating for having Saturday elections.
Yes.
Let's put that plug in there maybe.
Well, okay, now let's look at this, okay? So this, again, was the projection. Now, I've added in Ohio, Texas, and Florida that have gone to President Trump. Now, if Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin all stay blue, North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona, and Iowa doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
It's 279 in favor of Vice President Biden. Game's over. So it really puts an importance of how critical these three states are, and the sad side of it is those three states are the three that have hit the brakes.
They've hit the brakes.
So we wait and we see what happens. So let's do this. Let's take a break. We'll go back to the table. We'll continue breaking down what we have. We'll report any findings we have. We are going to say this. This will be our final hour. We want to try to go as long as we possibly can and try to make a call on this thing. We've gone this far. Why pull out? But at the time, this thing may not go. It may be tomorrow. We may have to come back in with a new segment tomorrow.
We are in tomorrow.
We are in tomorrow. So yeah, tomorrow's the next day. We may have to come back with a segment from there, but we'll talk about it when we return as we continue coverage of Decision 2020 here on GCHS TV. Back here on GCHS TV, Decision 2020, little military time there at the bottom. We'll have to get that fixed. Instead of 0:15, it's 0 hours. It's the first hour of the new day of Wednesday now as we've moved into hour number 5, 15 minutes past the midnight hour. And again, we wait. Still a few key states that, as we talked about in the last segment, waiting for those states to call. In some we have that are so very close to making a decision. Some that it appears that they've hit some form of a block. And could it be that it's the way that they have to count the votes, where the votes held up until the ballots were cast through the machines, and then they could start counting the absentee votes. So each state had its own way of doing things, and that's where we kind of go from there. We look at where we are right now, 124 total Electoral College votes still yet to be cast, with Vice President Biden currently leading by 6 at 210 to 204. The significant change, Texas being called just past the hour of midnight here on this November 4th at approximately about 2 minutes after. But that pulled it to within 6. And it was a race that Donald Trump had led much of the night, which we kind of expected with the way that the states were going to fall in. And then that 11 o'clock hour came and the West Coast came. And that was Washington, Oregon, and California, New Mexico also in there. And that was the surge that put Joe Biden over the 210 mark. The key that we still look at right now, I think that it's safe to say Minnesota is going to go to Joe Biden. That takes it to 220. The 5 states that remain that's going to decide this year's election, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Georgia. And if we go back into the 2016 election and we look at how that played out, it was something that we saw so many very close races in those states. But we look at the way that Wisconsin played out, and it was a super close race. Wisconsin in 2016, it was the first time it had flipped since 1988. The 4th closest state that year, less than 1%. And that's something that at 70% right now, you have to wonder how many of those votes are still out there. Roughly 2.4 million votes have been cast through the state of Wisconsin. You go to Michigan. This one was only decided by 0.2%. It's at 53%, and it has been stuck there for some time, making you kind of wonder, where is the holdup? What's holding this one back from moving forward? Currently, Donald Trump leading this one by roughly just under 8%, with about 3 million votes being cast at 53.2%. Now, Pennsylvania is moving now. It's up to 58%. Over 4 million votes have been cast. President Trump with nearly a 15% lead in that race. And that one is a key race. It was 20 Electoral College votes that go to that one, and one of those that it could certainly shift the direction that President Trump needed in a very key race. Pennsylvania, both parties spent all the way up until the 11th hour campaigning in Pennsylvania, trying to pull out a key area of this race here. North Carolina is currently at 98%, and less than a 2% difference. 5.4 million votes have been cast in North Carolina, currently separated by, say, 80,000 votes, roughly. 2.73 million to 2.655 in favor of Donald Trump. And then down in Georgia, 81%, so that race is moving. Over 4 million votes have been cast down in Georgia, with Donald Trump now at a 53 to 45% lead in that vote. So that's where we currently stand. And again, we look at how things played out in 2016. Donald Trump was given less than a 30% chance of winning the election and won it in a landslide, 306 to 232. Currently, of the states that remain out there that are unclaimed, in the 2016 election, the only state that I see that by the numbers could flip from what they currently are would be Arizona. Arizona was taken by Donald Trump. And currently, Joe Biden with a significant lead of about almost 200,000 votes. 2.4 million votes counted at 75%. So that's 11 votes that could be a swing state that could give those votes over to Vice President Biden. Donald Trump won that state by 4% in 2016. Arizona had gone Republican every year except for 96 and since 1952. So again, a very real possibility that that could be flipping and going the other direction. Nevada, still I'm not seeing any numbers reported from them thus far. It was the Nevada's voted with the presidential winner all but 2 times in 19 and 12. Going back to 2016, Nevada went with the Democrats. But as we know, it was a Republican that pulled through. So again, we have to wait. And the wait is so, you anticipate, you wait to see what happens. And again, the wait may continue well into today. It may continue into tomorrow, this weekend, next week, who knows? The unknown right now is the fact of we have absentee ballots that are being counted. Some were counted prior to the start of the election. Some could not be counted until the polls closed. It was state by state. So that's where we are. In the Senate, there's still 11 states waiting to call, and it's currently at 44 to 44. The forecast was 49 to 46. So it'll be interesting to see which states go where as these call, because you have a couple of states that have already called and they have gone red, and the states are still waiting to be called. It was projected to go to the Democrats. Could we see a swing in that, especially with Michigan being a possibility of still having to go from there? Right now, it was projected for the Democrats. The Republicans lead, but again, we've talked about the votes in Michigan at a stalemate, still at 53%. So not really certain what's going on there in the state of Michigan, but it is something to keep a close eye on, because we've been watching Michigan since all the way back at probably about 10 o'clock and have not seen any movement whatsoever from that point. We keep seeing some interesting numbers for whatever reason, I'm not certain, for Alabama. They've reversed it, they've put it on, they've taken it off twice now. It's still, by looking at the votes, 75% of the votes with about 1.9 million people still shows President Trump taking the state. But when we look at the Electoral College votes, it just dropped back down from 210 to 195. But that's the second time tonight that we've seen Alabama on our site. We're watching 270towin.com that they have flipped that state from there. All right, let's do this. Let's take a break. We come back. We're going to jump across a few other avenues and look at some other reporting outlets out there to see how the numbers compare. Are there other sites that's showing one compared to the other? Is there, news that we haven't heard yet? We feel like we've stayed pretty much on top of this. as we approach our final 30 minutes of coverage here tonight. Winner or no winner, at 1 a.m., we got to call this a conclusion, because I think we're all just about out of juice, and including the technology on that side. So we'll take a break. When we come back, we'll be at the bottom of the hour, and we'll take a look at other areas that have reported, and then hopefully see some of those states give us a call. When we return right after this, here on Decision 2020 on GCHS TV. Back here at the bottom of the hour on Decision 2020. James Collier trying to wrap things up here tonight. A big thanks to the crew, Jason Smith and Eric Booz, who were with me. Both had to tap out. Mr. Booz, a youngster at home, and Mr. Smith just making a trip back in today from North Carolina. So greatly appreciate their efforts today. as well as my producer and director, Nicholas Collier, on the other side of the wall here. Also, a big thanks to Philip Coffey, one of the IT guys here at Greenham County High School, that helped get all the technical issues squared away and make this a very successful broadcast. We've had a few minor glitches along the way, but we've gone leaps and bounds from where things were last year when we were trying to figure things out with this. But the only kind of hindrance we've had tonight was the fact that YouTube only gave us an option of going 4.5 hours on the initial broadcast. So still a few of you hanging on with us, and we hope to make a decision and a call of the race. I just don't know that it's going to happen tonight. That's currently where we are, as some of these votes still continue to fall in, and some of these states are just so close that we don't know. Now, as I talked about before the break, one of the things we're going to look at here is we've been going off of 270towin.com. That's the website that we've started with. That's the one we're going to finish with. But I want to throw out a comparison of some of the other news outlets and media outlets that are out there for you to look at as well. So with the current numbers that we have, again, Joe Biden at 214, Donald Trump at 201. The number dropped. Okay, now it has reversed. They have put Alabama back in Trump's category. So now it is 214 to 210. As the other thing that happened during the break, Iowa, 6 votes. And we talked about Iowa so much in how much that could become a deciding factor in this decision, especially in a tight race. If those 5 states went one way or the other, those 6 little votes there in Iowa could make a difference. Well, they just made a difference to President Trump's campaign re-election bid as they go final in Iowa, pushing Donald Trump's number to 210. So the live ticker there at the bottom, we see Joe Biden leading at 214, Donald Trump at 210. Now, we have heard reports of Arizona calling the election in favor of Joe Biden. It has not gone final on our side yet. We look at it. It is 75, almost 76% of the vote, with a 53% lead for Joe Biden out of 2.5 million votes. Just a little bit under 200,000 vote lead there for Joe Biden. And we're going to look at all of this when we go to the big board as we close out our last 15 minutes of our coverage here tonight. Now, currently on some of the other boards that we're going to take a look at, we go to Fox News, and they currently have Arizona called. And that is called in favor of Joe Biden, giving him a lead of 237 to 210. They also have Minnesota called in favor of Joe Biden. So that's the additional that you see there as well. They've also given Hawaii to Joe Biden. The unconnected states to the United States, not in the continental 48, but Alaska was expected to go red. Hawaii was expected to go blue. So they've already given those on Fox News. Now, we have not gotten that on our site yet, hence the reasons of the numbers that you see there. When you switch over to CNN, they're showing 205 Joe Biden, 136 for Donald Trump. And again, you say, how can the numbers be that misconstrued? Anything is possible, okay? The one thing that they are showing on their side is they are showing wins for President Trump in Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. And we've talked about if that happens, ball game. I don't know that we see that happen tonight. I think that's the way the maps are projecting and pointing toward. Do we get there? I don't know that we get there quite this evening before we go off the air. NBC News, also 205 to 136. They, however, are not reporting wins in Texas, Florida, or Iowa for Donald Trump. So not certain why Texas and Florida are not called on NBC's spot, but either way, it's I just wanted to throw those out there. So if you are looking at other numbers, maybe the numbers you look at are different than what we have, but I wanted to let you know that we are aware of other numbers that are out there, and we are taking those numbers into account as we go with the way we report, okay? So we have elected to use this site to deliver our numbers, and we believe that site is very reputable and can deliver accurate results as we move through this. Okay, where in the world do we go from here as we go trying to wrap up our 5th hour of coverage? Did I expect us to go 5 hours? I don't know that it was quite expected, but at the same time, I don't know that I expected us to be quite this close to where it felt like we could literally make a decision of where this thing goes within a moment's notice. But we are so close to that happening that it's one of the things that we just have to wait to see what happens with those votes in those states that we're waiting to see. And if we can simply get 1 or 2 or 3 of those states to fall, I think we could literally put this thing to bed and be able to finish things up before we close up at 1 a.m. That's when we're going to go. Let's do this. Let's go ahead and take a look at an updated election breaking news as we'll go through all of the election results from the state of Kentucky. Once again, we'll take a break, and then when we come back, we will take a look at the big board, final time there, and then we'll wrap up our broadcast from there. So here's an election update from GCHS TV. Kentucky, it's the Republican Donald Trump. No problem on this one as he cruises through the state. We expected, again, an easy victory for Donald Trump in this one, and he takes the win, no problem, over Joe Biden. Nearly 1.3 million votes cast for the incumbent. In the U.S. Senate, it's Mitch McConnell with a healthy win over Amy McGrath, the incumbent. 36 years plus now for Mitch McConnell, 1.2 million votes as he earns his re-election bid with a sizable win over the Democrat McGrath. In the House of Representatives, District Number 4, the incumbent Thomas Massie almost doubles the votes of the Democrat Alexandra Owensby, 254,000 to 123. Thomas Massie, another election bid in his back pocket. In the Supreme Court, this one took a while to get a confirmation, but it has gone final. District 7 finds Robert Conley 90,000 votes to Chris Harris's 72, and he takes the election bid for the Supreme Court in District 7. Let's go through all of the election results from around the state. In the House of Representatives, District 5, it's Harold Rogers getting the win over Matthew Best. District 27, Stephen West over Brian Short. District 29, Johnny Turner and Johnny Turner are still going at each other. Yes, they have the same names. They have different spellings of the first name. But currently, the Republican Johnny Turner has about a 3,000 vote lead in this one. It has still not gone final. Philip Wheeler over Glenn Hammond in District 31 of the Kentucky Senate. In the House of Representatives, District 92, it's John Blanton, the Republican, over Ansel Smith. The Kentucky House, District 93, Norma K. McCormick and Rod Varney. It's Norma Kirk McCormick, with about almost a 3,800 vote lead in that one. 81% of the polls reporting that one still has not been called. District 95, Ashley Lafferty over William Reynolds. Again, 91% of those called, a 60 to 40% lead for the Democratic candidate of Lafferty. District 96, Patrick Flannery over Kathy Hinkle, 12,000 to 5,000. In District 97, Bobby McCool over William Hurst, 14,000 votes to 4,000 votes. District 99 finds Richard White, the incumbent, over William Redwine in a 65 to 35 landslide. District 100, Scott Sharp defeats the incumbent of Democratic candidate Terry Clark, 10,000 to 8,700. in District 100. And the two amendments on the Kentucky ballot, Amendment 1, rights for crime victims, a sizable voice heard for yes on this one, 1.1 million votes in favor of rights for crime victims. On Amendment 2, the increase of judicial terms from 6 years to 8 years, 69% said no to increased judicial term limits. So that's a run across the state of Kentucky with all the stuff that's out there thus far. All right, let's take a break. When we come back, I'm going back to the big board for one final time tonight. We're going to take a look at some of these states, see where they are. Have we had any fluctuations since the last time we visited the big board? And then we'll come back and we'll clean it up and close it up for tonight. Will we get an opportunity to name the next president of the United States? We will find out when we return right after this as our coverage of Decision 2020 continues on GCHS TV. Back here on GCHS TV, Decision 2020, our final stop tonight, or this morning, however you wish to say it, as we visit the big board one final time. What a great piece of technology that we've added into our coverage this year for the 2020 presidential election. We've also covered very heavily the race for the Senate in what appears to be a very nip and tuck battle back and forth. That one, I think, was expected to go to the Democrats, but maybe looking like it could swing in favor of the Republicans. And one of the things we talked about in the broadcast earlier with Jason Smith and Eric Booz both on the broadcast earlier tonight was the fact that with new voters this year, did we see an influx of straight ticket voting rather than the voters going individually by the seat that was being voted on? Did they pick a straight ticket Republican or Democrat and go straight across the board? And if that happened, especially if the Republican vote goes in favor of Donald Trump, you have to think that may have swung the vote for the Senate in favor of the Republicans. So do we see a realignment of a Republican Senate and a Republican president? Do we continue to see the off balance of a Republican president and a Democratic Senate, or a flip, a Republican or a Democrat, by a president and a Republican Senate? Two of those three become very difficult, as we've seen. It's struggles, it's butting of heads, but at the same time, Do you get the checks and balances you need in the state with one party in majority control? So we'll see how that works out. I don't think that we get the Senate called tonight, and it'll probably be in sometime tomorrow before we get that. All right, let's take a look at the board one last time, and then we'll have one more break. We'll finish this up when we come back. But when we look at this, as we go to our states that we've had, the one thing that we've had thus far from 2016 is we've seen no changes, okay? This thing has pretty much followed the pattern they ran in 2016 almost to a T. And here's where we stand currently. We think that Arizona is going to go to Joe Biden. We know that Minnesota is going to Joe Biden, which leaves us with 5 states that we want to take a look at. And again, we start back in here. We've called Minnesota, okay? We bring it back this direction. Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, and then down the coast, North Carolina and Georgia. And we knew these 2 states, especially Pennsylvania and North Carolina, were going to be deciding factors in this election. Projections showed Michigan and Wisconsin were going to flip back from Republican to Democrat. Let's look and see where we are. With Wisconsin, currently at 78% of the vote, and we see that Donald Trump appears to have a lead that he is pulling away, and that would be a key element to his reelection bid. 1.3 million votes to 1.2 million votes, and 2.6 million votes cast in the state of Wisconsin. Now, we switch back over to the big board and we go to Michigan. Now we're starting to see some movement. Michigan had been stuck at 53% for quite some time. Now we see it inching forward toward the 60%. As it goes forward, so does the sizable lead for Donald Trump. 53.5% to 44.8%. This was a state that was elected or that was decided by 0.2% in 2016. Donald Trump looking to pick up a key state in his reelection bid. Pennsylvania, now at 63%, 4.4 million votes have been cast, 2.5 to 1.8. A sizable lead for Republican Donald Trump. This one could be the nail in the coffin if this one holds true along with the ones that we've shown. Down the eastern coast, we go to North Carolina. This one's been stuck at 97.6% for quite some time, and you quietly see why. 50.1% to 48.7, 2.7 to 2.65 is the million votes favoring right now Donald Trump. This could be our closest race of any that we see this year. Donald Trump took this one by 4% back in 2016. This one looks like it's going to be much closer than that. Our last state we stop in is Georgia, now up to 83% of the vote favoring Donald Trump, 53% to 45.7. So let's flip back over to the board and let's look at what we have with our presidential ballots that we have here. So again, we're at 214 to 210, and somehow I have lost my map. Here we go. Okay. So this was the projected map that we began the night with. Now, we have some adjustments that we need to make. So Florida has gone to the Republicans. Ohio, a gold state, was a swing state, also to the Republicans. Iowa has also gone to the Republicans. That takes us to 279 to 216. Now, that's looking at Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, all staying blue. As they stand now, we're going to take Arizona and turn it blue. That takes Joe Biden to 290. But watch what happens here. When we flip Wisconsin, Michigan, and Pennsylvania, Donald Trump now goes to 262 with wins in either North Carolina or Georgia, in which he has leads in. Georgia looks to be enough. We'll call Georgia red. We'll go North Carolina blue. And it would put it at a final of 278 to 259. So going off of the numbers that we currently see, this is what we think happens, okay? Nevada has had some very slow numbers to report in. It was less than 5% of the votes that had come in here just a little while ago when I first looked at those. But again, they're expecting Nevada to stay blue. But going off of the projected numbers for what they look like right now, this is what the final map would look like. And outside of one state that has changed, with being Arizona, that's the only difference that you see between the states of this year as compared to 2016. Now, that's also saying that North Carolina would flip into Joe Biden. Now, we expect by the numbers right now, that number is going to stay like that, which would be 293 to 244. If you flip that back to red, there's your 304 to 233, and that's the difference between your district or your districts from 2016 and 2020. So here's the big board live. So that's the ones we wait for. Again, we can call Minnesota, we can call Arizona. We think both of those are blue. They're sizable leads. The ones we need to see are those five right here: Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, North Carolina, and Georgia. All right, we're going to take our final break. When we come back, we'll see if we have anything to report from that point forward, and then we're going to have to wrap up our coverage from here. We've gone 5 hours hoping to make a call, but it's not going to happen unless it happens in the next 10 minutes. That's when we continue our final break coming up on Decision 2020 on GCHS TV. About 7 minutes until the hour of 1 a.m. here on this November 4th. We started November 3rd. That was election back at 7 p.m. And here we go. We're still waiting for the final call on some very key states. Real quickly, we will update that race in the Senate, as now the Republicans have actually inched ahead by one seat, 45 to 44. Again, this was projected to be a 49 to 47 lead in favor of the Democrats. Do we see a shift in the Senate from tonight? We will see what happens from there. The keys that we're waiting for are those 5 states. Two of the states, we should say, from the Rust Belt, up in the Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, and then Pennsylvania to drop in there. All of the numbers that we found show those states are going to go those directions. We've looked through several other outlets and have found some different things. The Associated Press are reporting that they project Arizona and Minnesota to go to Biden and the rest of the states to go to Donald Trump. If that happens, that would then put in a sizable win for the incumbent and the Republican Party. It started all the way back in the 7 o'clock hour. We had our first state report at 7:02. That was Vermont. That was a 3-0 lead for Joe Biden, and he took another lead around 8 o'clock in which he had Maryland, Illinois, and Massachusetts that all flipped. That got him about a 30-vote lead. Donald Trump then grabbed the lead around mid part of 8 o'clock, and he kept it all the way up until 11, and that's when the West Coast came in. Oregon, Washington State, and California. That took Vice President Biden over the 200 mark, and he currently sits at 214 as we wait to see how these votes are going to land. Wisconsin, currently at 79%. The voting there, the numbers are slowly inching up, which leads me to believe that what's happening in Wisconsin is the paper votes were not counted early. They are currently counting those now. So we wait to see where that goes. In Michigan, 58%, almost 59%. Again, they were stuck at 53% for quite some time. So that leads us to believe, same thing, paper votes were being counted later. So Michigan, again, Donald Trump leading there. In Pennsylvania, 65% with now almost a 15% lead for Donald Trump in Pennsylvania with 4.5 million votes already cast there. Donald Trump, again, showing the lead. In North Carolina, it's stuck at 97.6, and it's too close to call. In this one, 50.1% to 48.7%. It's 2.73 million in favor of Donald Trump, 2.655 for Joe Biden. And this is one of those states that we're going to talk about that the Libertarian, the Green, and the Constitution, the parties that are not your main ticket, they're going to change the outcome of this state. As you put those three together, and it's a 1.2% difference. 1.2% would change this from 50.1. If you put it with Joe Biden, it would take him all the way up to 49.9. We're talking about 0.2%, the same difference we saw in Michigan back in 2016. And then finally down in Georgia, as now the numbers have gone offline for Georgia, but the last time that we saw numbers for there, Donald Trump appeared to be pulling away quite mightily in that race. Here we go, 85.5%. Now showing up 52.4%, to 46.4% in favor of Donald Trump. So if everything plays out with the way the numbers appear right now, Donald Trump is going to be your newly elected President of the United States, as he will be the incumbent. He will have enough to defeat Joe Biden for a re-election bid and another 4 more years for the Republicans to be in the White House. Unfortunately, we are not going to be able to make that decision here tonight. We gave it a good run as we started at the hour of 7 o'clock, and here we are looking down the barrel at hour number 6, and unfortunately, that's where we're going to have to pull the plug for tonight's coverage. Hopefully tomorrow, as a nation, we find out exactly what the final decision holds so that we can put this election behind us and start moving toward 2021 and hopefully new beginnings. A big thanks goes out to everyone that helped make tonight possible. First off, my guests, special host of Jason Smith and Eric Booz. I could not have pulled off tonight without the assistance of those two fine gentlemen. They brought to the table so many excellent elements from the historical side to the election side and so many things in between. So greatly thank all of their helps from there. Philip Coffey, IT guy with Greenham County High School here and the school district. He hooks us up with so many technological pieces to make things work. There are more cables that are running throughout this studio and the control room right now than a person would have on in life support, but somehow it all connects together and makes it work. And Philip does a lot of that behind the scenes to help me get the pieces I need to work to make this class very feasible and broadcast like this possible to bring out that information to the general public. Behind the scenes tonight, our producer and director was Nicholas Collier, making the trip up from Lexington to give me a hand, much like last season. or I say last season, last year, I should say, when we did the 2019 gubernatorial race and our first ever live broadcast for GCHS TV. And man, how things have grown and changed as we've moved forward here tonight. And finally, all of the viewers that tuned in, whether it was for a few minutes or the ones that stuck with us all night long, we greatly appreciate all the support for everything we do here for GCHS TV. Well, unfortunately, I have to leave you, and we leave you undecided, with Joe Biden leading 214 to 210 in the Electoral College, waiting for some key states to make their decisions and announce the finals. Hopefully by morning, we have our answer. For everyone with GCHS TV, Nicholas Collier, Eric Booz, and Jason Smith, I say good night from Decision 2020, presented by GCHS TV. Good night, everyone.